Dayo sat by the shore, staring at the endless blue sea. His heart ached for his daughter Mira. She had loved the sea, just like him, always laughing and running by the water's edge. But one day, on a fishing trip, she was taken by the waves, and Dayo couldn't save her. Now he spent his days wondering if he could ever feel joy again. Mira was gone, but he couldn't accept it. One evening, as the sun dipped low, a village elder told him a tale. He spoke of the sea people, magical beings who lived deep beneath the waves. They could do things that no one else could, things like bringing back those who were lost. At first, Dayo didn't believe him, but over the days the idea grew in his mind. What if he could bring Mira back? Dayo decided to search for the sea people. He didn't tell anyone, for they would call him foolish, but he needed to try. Every night, he went out to sea, calling to the water, hoping the sea people would hear him. But they never came. Days turned into weeks, and still, nothing happened. Then, one night, something strange happened. He heard a soft splash nearby, and when he looked, he saw a figure in the water. She had long, flowing hair and shimmering scales on her tail. Dayo's heart raced. Could it be? Was this a sea person? Without thinking, he reached out, grabbing her arm before she could swim away. She thrashed and tried to escape, but Dayo held tight. He brought her to shore, not daring to let go. She was young, about the age Mira would have been. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she trembled under his gaze. "Please," Dayo whispered, his voice shaking, "bring back my daughter, Mira." The mermaid, who said her name was Liana, looked at him with sad, frightened eyes. "I don't have that kind of magic," she said softly. But Dayo didn't believe her. Surely she could bring Mira back. He kept her hidden in a big wooden tub of seawater, out of sight of the villagers, who would surely take her away if they knew. Days passed, and Dayo kept asking Liana for help. He didn't let her go, hoping that she would finally agree to bring Mira back. But Liana repeated that she couldn't. She was afraid, her eyes full of tears, but Dayo couldn't let her go. He needed to see Mira again. One day, Liana began telling him stories. She spoke about her home in the deep ocean, a place full of color and light, with plants and animals that Dayo had never seen. She told him about her family, her brothers and sisters, and how they sang songs that echoed through the water. Dayo listened, feeling a mix of curiosity and sadness. He had never thought about what Liana's life was like before he took her. In the mornings, a bright blue bird began to visit Dayo. It was a kingfisher, with feathers as blue as the ocean, and it perched near his fishing nets, watching him with shining eyes. The bird came every day, and soon Dayo began to speak to it. He told the bird about Mira, his beloved daughter, and how he wished he could hold her again. The kingfisher tilted its head as if it understood, and Dayo felt a strange comfort. Liana noticed the bird too. "In my home," she said one day, "we believe that birds can carry messages from lost souls. Maybe your daughter is close by, watching over you." Dayo didn't know what to think. Could the kingfisher really be Mira's spirit? He shook his head, brushing the thought away. No, he needed Mira back, not just a sign of her. But as the days passed, he found himself looking for the bird, feeling a glimmer of peace when he saw it. Liana grew quieter each day. She missed her family, and the tub of seawater was not the ocean she loved. "Please," she whispered one night, "I want to go home. I won't run away, I promise. Just let me go." But Dayo couldn't. He felt guilty, but the thought of losing his only chance to see Mira again was too much. So Liana stayed, and her songs grew softer, her spirit dimmer. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant colors, Liana began to cry. Her tears fell into the water, shimmering like pearls. "I don't know how to bring Mira back," she sobbed. "But if I could, I would. I understand how it feels to lose someone." Dayo felt his heart soften. For the first time, he thought about how Liana must feel, trapped and alone, just like he was with his grief. He felt a strange bond with her, a shared sadness that made him want to comfort her. But he pushed the feeling away, afraid it would make him lose hope. The kingfisher returned the next morning, its bright eyes watching Dayo closely. He felt like the bird was trying to tell him something, but he didn't know what. He began speaking to it more, asking it if Mira was safe, if she was at peace. The bird chirped softly, and Dayo felt a warmth in his chest. Slowly, Dayo began telling Liana stories of his own. He spoke of Mira, of her laughter and the way she would dance by the water. Liana listened, her eyes full of understanding. She told him about the songs her mother used to sing, lullabies that made her feel safe and loved. As the days turned to weeks, Dayo felt his heart slowly changing. He began to see Liana not as a magical being, but as a person with her own pain and dreams. He noticed how her eyes would brighten when she talked about her home, and he realized that keeping her here was not right. One morning, as the kingfisher perched nearby, Dayo felt a deep sadness mixed with a strange peace. He knew what he had to do. Holding a woven charm he had made in honor of Mira, he went to Liana's side. Dayo knelt by the tub where Liana sat, her tail resting warily in the water. Her eyes widened as she saw the woven charm in his hand, and she looked up at him with a mix of hope and caution. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of his decision. "Liana," he said softly, "I've realized that keeping you here won't bring Mira back. I've been selfish. I thought you were my only chance, but I was wrong." His voice trembled. "You have a family too, and I can't keep you away from them." Liana's face softened, and for the first time she smiled, a small, sad smile, but a smile nonetheless. She placed her hand gently over his. "Thank you, Dayo. I'll never forget you." Dayo nodded, his heart heavy yet somehow lighter than before. He took the woven charm, dipped it into the seawater, and held it close to his chest. This small charm, made from strands of rope and beads Mira used to play with, was a symbol of his love and memory of her. He whispered a quiet prayer, hoping that wherever Mira's spirit was, she would feel his love. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Dayo carried the tub to the shore where the waves gently lapped at the sand. Liana looked out at the vast ocean, her eyes shining with both relief and gratitude. With a deep breath, Dayo tipped the tub, letting the seawater spill out as Liana slid gracefully back into the water. She swam a few feet away, then turned to look at him one last time. Her face held a warmth and forgiveness that touched Dayo's heart deeply. "Goodbye, Dayo," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. Dayo nodded, his throat tight. "Goodbye, Liana. Be safe." Liana disappeared beneath the waves, her shimmering tail the last thing he saw before the water returned to calm. Dayo stood there for a long time, watching the sea, feeling an emptiness that was different from before. It was a peaceful emptiness, as though something heavy had finally lifted from his heart. As he turned to leave, he noticed the kingfisher once more, perched on a nearby rock. It watched him with a calm, knowing gaze, and Dayo felt as if Mira herself was looking at him, proud of his decision. For the first time since her passing, he felt a quiet sense of peace, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was at rest. Over the days that followed, Dayo returned to his life in the village, his grief softened by the memories of Mira and his time with Liana. He spoke to the kingfisher each morning, sharing his thoughts and stories, and found comfort in its presence. Whenever he felt lonely, he would look out to the sea, feeling as if Mira's spirit was out there somewhere, watching over him. Months passed, and the villagers began to notice a change in Dayo. The heaviness that had once clouded his eyes had lifted, and he had a quiet wisdom about him. He would often tell children stories of the sea people, weaving tales of magical beings and brave journeys, and the children would listen wide-eyed, captivated by his words. One evening, as he watched the waves roll in, Dayo saw something glimmer in the water. He squinted, his heart skipping a beat. There, just beneath the surface, he thought he saw a flicker of scales, shimmering in the fading light. His heart quickened, and he took a step closer to the shore, his gaze locked on the spot where the light had flickered. Then he heard a soft, familiar laugh, a laugh that sounded so much like Mira's that he froze, listening. It was faint, like an echo carried by the wind, but it filled him with warmth. A smile spread across his face, and he whispered a thank you to the sea. From that day on, Dayo knew that Mira's spirit was with him, in the waves, in the sky, and in every gentle breeze. And though he would never see her again in this world, he felt her presence everywhere, a quiet reminder that love, once shared, could never be truly lost.